Welcome back to another episode of the Braun Performance and Rehab Podcast, powered by ISOFIT, Firefly Recovery, and Engage Movement. ISOFIT is my go-to for all things isometric strength training. For more on ISOFIT, be sure to check out ISOFIT. Firefly Recovery is the official recovery provider of the Braun Performance and Rehab Podcast. For more on Firefly, be sure to check out recoveryfirefly.com. This episode is also powered by Dr. Ray Gorman, the founder of Engage Movement. Learn how to boost your income without relying on sessions and get a free training on the blended practice model by following Ray Gorman DPT on Instagram. Enjoy. Luke, welcome to the podcast, buddy. It's great to see you again. For people who aren't familiar with you and this incredible journey you've been on in the sport of soccer, would you mind filling them in a little bit about who you are and all that you've got going on, man?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on the podcast. Obviously he's touched on it. I play soccer, and from a young age, I've always loved the game, loved everything about it, scoring goals and winning games. So throughout my whole career, going up until middle school, I played locally. And then in middle school, the whole local scene, there was politics in it and just not exactly where I wanted to be. So I ended up going up to Maryland United, which is over in Annapolis, and I would commute 2 hours there and back for training 3 times a week, and then games on weekends, and then played there through my senior year, and then went to Boston University for my freshman and the start of my sophomore year before I decided it would be nice to tear both my groins off the joint. And from there, I went and got surgery in December, and I've now stepped away from Boston, and I'm looking to go over to Germany to start a professional career.
Yeah, that's super exciting. Super exciting, dude. I mean, huge congrats to you just for the resilience you display to continue to push forward and work towards that goal of making it at that higher level despite injury, setbacks, and requiring a lot of travel in the meantime as well, by the sounds. It's interesting. That comes up when I talk with a lot of athletes, is they feel like wherever their local area is does not offer the best opportunity for them to compete in high level sport. And they end up traveling like crazy. One girl, she was driving with her mom 12 hours round trip every week over and over and over again. And I just can't imagine the amount of like time invested and other resources invested into making, that soccer career or that sports career that we all see possible that way. It's kind of that like under the iceberg analogy, if you will. And it certainly sounds like you had a very similar upbringing within the sport that way.
Yeah, really thankful for my parents being able to drive me throughout middle school and then early in high school. And then also just, it really comes down to where we're at. So over here on the Eastern Shore, obviously there's not much in terms of sports for probably an hour, 2 hours away. So obviously in my head the whole time, it's like, I want to make it. I want to go big time. So the most logical option was to commit that time. Very, very thankful to have Uber drivers and my parents to take me throughout the many years. But yeah,
I'm sure they're about being your personal chauffeur to all of that stuff as well.
I don't think they did. But I think in the long run they'll like the memories. So
yeah, absolutely. Was there ever a time during that process that you were like, man, I don't know about this? Like, some doubts settle in or that sort of thing when, everyone else from your high school, and maybe this wasn't the case for you, but a lot of people, they're going out on the weekends, they're going to dances and proms and all these crazy events. And maybe you got to do that yourself, but I find a lot of athletes that are really dedicated and committed end up missing some of those high school memories in order to chase their sport dreams and ambitions and so on that way.
As you said, I did miss a lot of events but in a way, I had my close group of friends, and it wasn't like I was going out on weekends or anything. It was, if I was going to hang out with them, it would be after school, maybe hang out for a few hours and then call it a day. And then as for like school events or like proms, homecomings, there were times that I had to miss, but in my mind, it was all for a good cause. And even when I did end up getting to go to them, it wasn't like, wow, that was the greatest time of my life. It was more, yeah, had a little bit of fun, but would have rathered almost have had a game. And throughout my whole life, it's been soccer oriented. If I win a game, it's like, wow, my mood is great, and everything's good when you win games of sport. And I think that's something that non-athletes sometimes struggle to understand, that winning or like scoring a goal, there's no feeling that can describe doing that. So yeah, going out's fun, going like doing all these things, but something about the sport just draws me in every time.
It sounds like a lot of your identity is really rooted within the sport of soccer that way.
As I've said, growing up, I didn't have much outside of soccer. Most of my friends were in soccer. Most of everything I did was in soccer. So I'd get home, even in elementary school, I'd do my homework in the car so that I could go outside and play soccer, because my parents always had a rule of school before sports. So I'd go do my schoolwork in the car so that I can go outside and immediately play soccer. And then obviously, as I've grown up, that's stayed. So lots of training. And now, as it actually takes effort to stay in shape,
Speaking of that for a second, you're a freaking academic weapon. You didn't mention that you majored in like math, like not just like, like intro to stats, like math. Like, dude, you've got like that big brain energy going on, don't you?
sometimes, but when the brain turns on, it works. So I try my best.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I find it's very difficult for athletes to be able to balance both, to be able to succeed academically, but also succeed on field or on the court or pitch or whatever the heck you call it that way. So how have you, it sounds like the prioritization principle helps, right? Like, okay, school first, then I can go play soccer. But how have you been able to continue that as the demands for both have obviously increased, whether that's in college or just with crazy schedules and travel and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think the main thing is just trying not to procrastinate, even though it's so easy to do so. So I try to get my work done as soon as possible. But if there's training or something, obviously I go to training. But like when I was doing the 2-hour commutes, I'd do my schoolwork in the car. It's about just getting little things done where you can, and not saving big things for all at once. Because if I can do 30% of this project in this 45-minute window that I have, it makes it a lot easier down the line when I have to go and finish it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And obviously, you've been able to do that while balancing travel all over the place that way, which I kind of tip my hat to, because unless I'm on a plane, if I'm in a car, even if I'm just, passenger that way, I can't get work done. I can't sleep in a car, can't like, read or anything, just jacks me up real bad. So I give you a lot of credit for being able to get things done when conditions are not always the most optimal or in your favor. Where on the travel topic for a second, where all have you been able to travel to because of the sport of soccer, and any places that really stick with you? Any favorites? I would assume Australia probably fits in there somewhere.
Soccer has taken me to a lot of places. Believe it or not, I haven't actually ever played in Australia, but because my family's all from over there, I've been over there, played obviously just with friends and family over there, but never in an organized fashion. And then in terms of the US, I've been up and down the coast. So all the way up to Massachusetts, Vermont area, and then all the way down to Florida, and then inwards on the East Coast as well, a little. And then also over in California for nationals. So that's a lot of fun. But then internationally, I've been able to go over to Denmark twice through the brand Capelli. They put together a team from their sponsored teams around the country. And each summer they send a team over for like a week and a half to compete in like an international tournament, which is a lot of fun. We actually won it the first year that I went. So that one sticks with me a lot. And then also obviously like California, going on a flight with your team and, experience a new place is another like memory that's close to home.
It's way different than the East Coast. My goodness.
Yeah.
I remember my first time out there, and it's like 80 and sunny every day. The weather's beautiful, but the traffic is like tenfold what I was used to. I'm like, man, on one hand, I love this. On the other hand, I want nothing to do with this. It's certainly a unique place that way for sure. And obviously, you've got a pretty good travel experience. You've been internationally that way. What kind of thoughts do you have about this concept of going over to Germany and playing there? Because obviously new environment, big transition, going to be away from home. Tell me about kind of what you've been doing to prep for that and how you're feeling going in.
Yeah, been a lot of prep because I know the culture over there. It's very work ethic heavy. So if you're not willing to work hard, you're not going to make it over there. And so I train at least once or twice a day for about 2 hours each, and then on top of that, sometimes running, sometimes like speed work, lifting. Just in terms of everything over there, I've been trying to learn the language as well because yeah, some of them speak English, but it'd be a lot easier to get by if I could speak their language. Yeah, just culturally, it's going to be a completely different shift, which I'm actually looking forward to. Going out on my own and having to learn in a not high pressure, but a new environment should be a lot of fun.
Talk to me a little bit about the language barrier that exists, because I would assume sports like soccer and maybe baseball have that more prevalent than almost any other sport, right? You know, soccer is one of those sports where you've got people playing across the entire world. So you could have, you know, completely different languages or several different languages, you know, people speaking them on the same team, and it can, I would imagine, make things a little difficult if you yourself don't speak them all. So talk to me a little bit about that, because I've always been curious. You know, me growing up in middle of nowhere PA playing soccer, we didn't have quite the level of diversity that some of the international play presents nowadays, if you will.
Even growing up around here, there's always been multiple different languages going on. There's players from Haiti, there's players from Hispanic countries. So learning to play with other people that don't quite speak your language exactly. There's something about the game that for 90 minutes it brings everybody together, where it doesn't matter what language you speak, where you're from, what your background is. Something about the game for those 90 minutes, everything outside of the game doesn't matter. So there's been games, even through this whole process of getting ready, I've played in pickup games where maybe 50% of the people speak English, and you might, it seems like it'd be more difficult, but you kind of get by, you know, through I don't know how to word it, but through knowing soccer, you can kind of get along with people who you might not understand linguistically. And then going over to Germany, obviously, they're one of the few countries over there that actually I feel like is more accepting of other nations' players. So their philosophy is basically, if you're a good player, you can play. Whereas some other countries, like I know England's a little more tight about it, where if you're not from England, it's going to be a lot tougher for you to get in. You've got to be 10, 20% better than the next guy if you're going to even have a chance. Whereas Germany, if you're good enough to play, you're going to play. So
interesting. Yeah, I would assume, you know, each country's a little different. And it sounds like ultimately it comes back to the soccer IQ element. If you know and understand and really just embrace the game, then you're able to kind of figure out how to communicate without words alone, you know, from body language to just like literally yelling something to get people to look up. Like, I don't know. I think it's certainly one of those things that's really cool to see how you can bring so many people together around a sport. And I believe, I could be totally wrong about this, but I believe it's like the most played sport worldwide. Like, it seems like everyone everywhere has some kind of element into soccer, and it doesn't matter what your income status is, what country you live in. It just seems like soccer has some kind of footprint across the country, across the world, I should say. With that said, though, obviously when you play sports, there's risk or chances things break and you get injured. And it sounds like you were unfortunate enough to have that happen to you. In fact, well, you know, that's kind of how we met each other, actually. So for people wondering about like what that was like for you, I mean, first off, what happened? And then what did you kind of do? And how did you kind of work back to this level of being able to play high level soccer after a pretty significant injury and procedure?
Coming off of last summer, I just finished up a season with the Annapolis Blues, which is like a semi-professional team, and then went into college, did the first few training sessions, and then the first game of preseason, I reached for a ball and I felt my right groin, and I was like, wow, that doesn't feel good. Kept playing because throughout my whole high school career and everywhere else, it was always just keep running and it'll fix itself, which usually it actually has fixed itself. After that game, though, I'm like, wow, let me get the PT guy to look at it. He says, oh, you should probably be out for a few weeks, get that fixed up. So that was the first time I've ever been sidelined. It's mentally, it's like, wow, what do I do right now? And then I come back, first game back, we played UNH, which they were always like a top 25 team in the country, basically. Played like 10 minutes at the end of the game. And then the next training session, the day after, I reached for a ball with my left leg and the left groin went. So, and that one went worse. So the PT guy had me out for about a month and a half. That was even worse mentally because it had been probably 3 weeks of being out, came back, and then immediately to be sidelined again. It was like, wow, this sucks, which obviously you want to be playing, but it was good to have people around me that were like my teammates and roommates were all very supportive throughout the whole process. But then after that month and a half, I come back, slowly reintegrate, like maybe warming up for a game, but not playing, and then coming back maybe 5-10 minutes a game. And I'm sitting here thinking, this is still kind of hurting. It just started getting worse and worse and worse. Come near the end of the season, we're playing Holy Cross, and I'm at this point, we're halfway through the game, and I sit down. And when I stand up to go back out for the second half, I told my other midfielder, I told him, I'm not going to be able to finish this game because I could just tell the pain was getting there. And around the 80th minute, I went down, struggled to get off the field. So that was when I told my parents, I was like, I'm getting surgery. Like, there's no point trying to finish out the season because I'd been having to take Advil and stuff just to get through that point. Once I decided that, it was mentally, it was almost a relief to finally know that I was getting something fixed because it had been hurting throughout the entire season. And then, so I get surgery in December, which that was my first time ever getting surgery, which obviously it's a little nerve-wracking, but also I almost was happy to get the surgery because like when I got out of surgery, my mom was like, oh, you okay? Like, are you going to be fine? I'm like, yeah, I'm great. This is finally starting the recovery process because it had been 4-ish months of pain. So I was like, yeah, it hurts right now, but in a few months' time, it should be back to good. So that was obviously exciting. And then coming back, I actually trained once using tire physical therapy, and with your help, I was able to get back to a strong enough level, and then started training with my old high school club, which was a little interesting because obviously the level from D1 soccer to high school ball, not high school ball, but high school club ball is a little different. Using that as more of a springboard to get back with the Annapolis Blues, believe it or not, actually you probably will believe it, getting back to your highest level is a lot harder than you think. So even simple things like getting fit, I'd never had to try to get fit. And for the past few months, it's been, oh, I have to go run hard and do sprints to actually get fit. So when I first started with the Annapolis Blues, I was like, wow, I'm not actually fit. This is weird. And then getting fit, getting sharp again, because being out for 4 or 5 months, like away from high level soccer, it's your touch isn't the same. So it was all about getting back to a high level. And then by the end of the season, I feel like I was at a level where I was right back into the mix, where at the start of the season, I was like, I probably am not quite there yet. By the end of the season, though, I'm in the mix.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. And end of the season on a few good results. And I had known going into it that my goal was to go abroad. And then from there, it's making phone calls and lots of time on the phone.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. As you mentioned, there's a gap between return to sport and return to desired level of performance. And I find this is not discussed enough. Yet almost every athlete that I've talked with brings it up, right? You know, they get told, oh, you'll be back to sport at this time. And then everyone works to make that possible. But what no one or very few people actually tell them is just because you're cleared to go back to sport doesn't mean you're going to be playing at the level you want to. Now, there are some incredible exceptions out there. of amazing individuals who like never miss a beat. DJ Bennett is the first one to come to mind for me, right? She misses 3 years due to knee injuries and multiple surgeries and comes back and wins a high school state championship in tennis. Like, my goodness, hats off to you. Wicked impressive. I could never do something like that. But for, I would say, the majority of athletes, and I don't have a research article to cite on this, but I would say at least 80% of them, they get cleared to go back to sport, and that entire injury process was their longest time away from sport. And before that, when they were playing, maybe they had some kind of weird sensation, some pain, some kind of mental block, whatever it is, where, maybe they weren't playing how they wanted to prior to injury. And then you have injury, which takes you away from sport. For many athletes, the longest time that they've ever been away from the sport, months on end. It's like, man, like, these kids have played nonstop for 10 years. This is the first time they're going without the sport. Their identity is within the sport. So to step away from it, it's so weird. And as you mentioned, the touch wasn't there. The conditioning wasn't there. And it's like, well, you're away from the sport for 3-4 months. Like, it's natural to, lose a little bit of that stuff when you're not doing it regularly. But the conversation needs to shift from, oh, well, it's okay, like, you'll get it back, to what could we do different in order to help, like, push that along a little bit quicker, a little bit sooner that way, right? Like, hey, like, if we're 2 months out, can we start like conditioning on a bike? Can we start doing a ski, or can we start doing something to get the heart rate up, just so that way that some of these other things like conditioning and so on are less of a shock to the system when it really comes time to it that way. And obviously you were still able to get to that level of performance that you desired. It just takes time, and it takes a lot of work and commitment. And I feel like a lot of times people don't talk about that side, right? The PT alone is not enough. You have to do a lot more in order to get back to that level. And, I think the willingness of someone to put in that extra work really dictates the overall success, not just of them returning to sport, but ultimately playing at the level that they want to, because that's what we want for everyone, right? Like, to me, a successful rehab is not just you going back to sport, but you staying there and doing it at the level that you want. But a lot of times that's just not in the conversation for people. Quick break, because if you're a rehab professional sick of burnout, this could be your answer. Engage Movement's blended practice model is a proven system built by Dr. Ray Gorman, a PT who walked away from the 55-hour-a-week grind and built a blended practice model that doubled his income while working less than 25 hours a week, and he didn't have to rely on the traditional way of selling sessions to do so. It's all about blending remote and in-person services, stacking monthly recurring revenue, and building a business that finally supports your life, not the other way around. This model isn't just theory. Real providers, including myself, are creating lives of freedom and flexibility without being tied to their schedule. And as a listener, you get free access to the complete training. DM my name, Dan, to @RayGormanDPT on Instagram and receive your free breakdown on the model.
When I was getting the surgery done, I was told best case scenario, you're back in about 8 weeks, because there was an NBA player who actually had the same surgery done, who was back in less than 8 weeks, back in the starting 11. So I was like, not starting 11, starting 5 or whatever basketball is. And so I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, I'll be back in 2 months. And then I had quite a few little setbacks where I had to either go back to Philly to get injections done, or like an MRI to just figure out what was going on. So my 8 weeks became 9 weeks, then 10 weeks, then 11 weeks, then 12 weeks. And it was just more of a like mental block, because I was like, wow, I could be back in like 8, 9, or 10 weeks. And then it just kept going on and on and on. So I do agree that that's something that isn't really talked about.
Absolutely. And I mean, there was an individual I was talking with at a conference the other week who was telling me about a orthopedic provider that told all of the athletes that they worked with that they would be returned to sport from an ACL injury in 4 months. And, obviously there's some different literature out there that suggests maybe 8 to 12-ish month timeline for that. Now, if it works for that individual, great. I don't know him at all. It was just kind of one of those secondhand story kind of things. But people have a lot of different thoughts and opinions and beliefs around return to sport timelines. And there's not one right or wrong. It's just a matter of, it might not be what happens for you, unfortunately. Things don't always go your way, as you mentioned, but it's all about having the resilience to continue to push forward even when it might not be going your way, because it's tough, right? Like surgery hurts. Like it's tough to bounce back. You're not doing as much as you want. Maybe you're on some kind of like medications and stuff that jack you up a little bit overall. I think that as long as you're resilient and you stay the course and keep pushing forward, which you did, you're going to get the outcome that you want. You just got to throw stuff against the wall for a long time, and eventually stuff starts to stick.
Even like you're saying, little things that you don't think about. So I had surgery in December and then had to go straight back to Boston for final exams. And obviously right after surgery, you're not feeling great. You're on different medications that might mess with your brain a little. So I actually was having like pain, and then I went into like office hours pre-final exam study session, and I was getting like really nauseous. And I walked in late, obviously, because it took me the 3/4 of a mile walk took me probably 45 minutes to an hour instead of the usual 10 to 15 that it would take. And I get in there late, and after 5, maybe 10 minutes of being in there, I'm like, I'm gonna like, I was too nauseous to be in there. So I walked this 45 minutes to an hour, and then was there for 5-10 minutes, didn't even take a single note, and had to leave because it was not going to end well if I stayed sitting in there. And it's little tiny moments like that where you're like, this sucked, but in the end, it all ends up working out okay.
Right. Yeah, no, it's never ending challenges and stuff that not a whole lot of people tell you about. Like that example there is one I haven't heard from athletes before, but I can certainly see how it would happen that way, from the side effects of the medications and obviously the demands of college and university that way as well. One of the other things you were talking about is the amount of time that it's taken from that professional opportunity side of things in relation to soccer, right? Like I remember we talked with Marley earlier this year on the podcast, and she said something similar. It's like, these opportunities are really difficult to come by. Like, to play Division I soccer and have a Division I soccer career in the US alone is wicked impressive, and it's something very few soccer athletes get to do. But now on top of that, if you want to transition into a professional or semi-professional kind of opportunity, those don't exist for everyone. Not everyone gets to that level. So you really have to set yourself apart and work ridiculously hard, not just from a soccer standpoint, but also almost like from a marketing and networking standpoint as well. Like you have to get noticed, you have to develop relations with people and so on that way. I'd love to hear more about what that process has been like for you transitioning into the professional side of soccer that way, because it's drastically different than playing youth or travel and so on that way.
That's probably the worst part of the United States is the whole recruitment and the opportunities. It's very, as I said before, it's very political. If you don't know people, it's going to be very difficult to go to a high level, which is very unfortunate about the current state of the country, because if you go somewhere in South America, you could be the poorest person there, but if you can kick a ball really well, and if you get the right opportunity, then you have the chance to go to the very top. Here, you don't have the money to play. Sometimes you can't play. And even like around this area, I've been throughout the whole training process, I've been kicked off of fields. I've been told to never come back to fields. People have turned sprinklers on to get me off the fields. And it's just like little minor inconveniences that the U.S. puts into place that makes it a lot more difficult for young athletes to make it to the top. And so that's like training side. But then in terms of recruitment side, when I was going through high school, I would say I was a decent player. You have to be in certain leagues to get noticed. So I played in ECNL, which in the current state, it seems like MLS Next is where most colleges go to get the recruitment done. And so didn't seem to matter how many goals I scored, how well I played. There was only a few schools that were going to be looking at me, which I was actually fortunate. Boston University, they did continue to look at me. They kept coming to my games. Coming out of high school, I was actually, because I had always had in my mind, like, oh, I could go to UNC or something. I was like, and I was probably the fittest I've ever been, the sharpest I'd ever been. So I was like, this is my chance to go give it a go. And I talked with my head coach, who was from Scotland, and we had plans to possibly go do trials over in Scotland or England. I ended up playing with that semi-professional team in the summer because he was also the head coach for that, that's another little link that helped me, because he coached me in high school and now he coaches a semi-pro team. So it bridges that gap a lot easier, which a lot of people don't have as well. And then after that, the goal was to go over abroad, but I ended up getting convinced by my college coach to not go abroad. Looking back, you could say I learned something, but there was also an opportunity that I might have missed. But I did actually learn a lot from college. It's just in the end, so I go to college, come back, and the main thing about this opportunity going to Germany is just having the desire to reach out to people and want it more than anything. Like the whole, like how I said, school before soccer. Now it's market myself before school, because I'm now 20 years old and my legs are only going to be legs for however many years. So this is like striking time where I have to be calling people, emailing people. I was on LinkedIn connecting with every single person that I could, because coming back to it, that's the problem with American sports. Doesn't matter how good you are, if you don't know people, it's going to be very difficult to get to where you need to be, which it all does go back to me commuting 2 hours. In Salisbury, there was no, if I'd continued to play in Salisbury, yeah, I might be a good player, whatever. If I didn't have the connections of playing in ECNL, which is even still a step below some others, I don't think I would have been able to play Division I soccer, which is crazy to think because there are so many programs out there, but it's just about who you know, where you play, who your coaches are.
People say that all the time, and I don't think people fully understand and grasp the concept of what it means to truly network and how those opportunities can really change your life. And it's not to say that you should go about them being transactional, because I think that's the wrong way to do it, right? If you're going in to play with a team and you're like, hey, my whole goal is to connect and befriend this person so that I can get this opportunity and go here, like, people are not stepping stones at the end of the day. That's the wrong way to look about it. And I think ultimately you have to find a way to give something back, right? It's always a game of give and takes, right? If someone helps you, what can I do to turn around and help someone else? What can I do to kind of pour into that next generation or give someone else an opportunity or a connection that they might not have otherwise that way? I think that the more athletes kind of understand that concept of networking and what it means to have some relationships that are an inch wide and a mile deep, but overall have a network that is a mile wide, is so essential in today's day and age. At the end of the day, like, it's to the point you made, it's all about who you know, right? Like, I haven't really interviewed for any position that I currently have. They've all been presented to me from a work standpoint because of the networking element that I have. It's crazy. It's like, man, like, I get to skip that process. This is awesome. It's great. To the other point that you made, soccer is such a unique sport in that it is so difficult to get into the professional side of things unless you're kind of put on that track from such a young age, like literally 2, 3, 4, 5 years old in some cases, right? Like, I think about some of these different kids that I've talked with and parents that I've consulted with that way, that it's like, yeah, their kid is 10 years old and already on some kind of academy team. And, they get to be 16 or 18 and they're playing pro, which is just wild to me, because it's like, here's a kid that, like, is a kid, like, they're a child, like, they should be in elementary school, but they're literally being, like, groomed for professional soccer from such a young age. It's absolutely wild. And obviously it makes it very difficult, as you said, to find professional opportunities unless you're in one of those academies from that young age, which, like, obviously people don't have a whole lot of control over that. Like, you're either put in it or you're not put in it. But the fact that you can still find a way to get it done and still find a way to get those opportunities, even if things are not, like, picture perfect for you that way, is really incredible. And we've talked about that with other athletes as well. We had Luke Meacham on the podcast a few years ago, and he played professional football in Germany, right? Like, he played D3 football in the US and tried to do the professional route here in America, but ultimately ended up getting opportunities abroad because of the networking, the marketing, and all that sort of thing. So there's truly a lot of value in that stuff, as you mentioned. And I think the more we can open doors and give opportunities for people like you, wherever they are in the world, the better we're going to be, because there's so many different things that come from like a lesson standpoint in playing a sport. The lessons that you get from your coaches, the captains, you playing yourself and reflecting and beyond that way are just truly incredible.
Yeah, I agree. There's something about sport that it teaches you so much more than you can learn going in and sitting in on a day of lectures. Because in my, like, you can learn a lot from a lecture, but you learn more about life in the real world going out and just doing it. Because so like sport has taught me resilience, it's taught me leadership, it's taught me all sorts of things. Like, I'm thinking of the word. It's a super simple word, and I don't know why it's not coming to my head. But it's simple things. Discipline, that's the one. Discipline. But you think I'm smart, but it's not coming out right now. And so it's sports teach you a lot more qualities that you need to continue throughout every one of life's activities.
So we've talked a little bit about where you've been in the past and how we got into soccer. We talked about kind of the present situation, and we've even talked a little bit about where the future is heading for you moving abroad and playing soccer and beyond that way. Is there anything that we didn't get a chance to discuss, or anything that we might have missed as we were chatting today, Luke?
Not too sure, actually. Yeah.
So like, man, this was great. Yeah, epic. Yeah. Awesome, rad, right on.
My whole life story.
Something like that. For people who want to find out more about you, Luke, where can they find you online and that sort of thing?
Instagram, Luke.Dunne5, Dunne. Not gonna give out my number. But yeah, I'll be, hopefully, once I get something going over there, I'll probably be posting on my Instagram more than most everything.
I'm expecting you to find your way onto TikTok here. I want some day in the life TikTok videos, something like that. Maybe.
We'll see. Never been big on TikTok or social media, so even putting posts out's a lot of work for me. I usually just send the pictures over to my sister and say, put something together for me, and she put something together.
So your sister is going to become your social media manager, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, maybe. She's at grad school now doing biostats, but maybe she can do a little side hustle and do my
biostats, social media. It goes together, right?
Yeah.
No, that's wicked impressive. And we'll link to your social media handles in the description below. That way, if you didn't quite catch it, you can just click there and see everything Luke is up to. Luke, this was awesome, dude. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.